Welcome to my show. I'm with a guest here. His name is Murphy Brotno. Mr. Murphy, how are you doing, sir?
I am doing excellent. Thanks so much. I'm really happy to be here to chat with you. I've enjoyed listening to your conversations quite a bit.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Murphy. Firstly, you are a autistic storyteller. You're also a disability justice advocate, and you also have an executive experience in management and sales. Can you please, sir, discuss more about yourself and how you're doing currently now, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. So I live just outside of Chicago, Illinois. I have two amazing kids. I've got two dogs, two cats, and a really strong marriage that are all at the sort of center of my support system. Currently, I am the executive director of a circus school just outside Chicago, Illinois, called the Actors Gymnasium. And there we teach circus professionally and recreationally to over 1,000 students a year and have a whole lot of fun. But I think most importantly, I am someone who has spent 50 years now trying to unpack the challenging experience that I've had moving through the world. And something that over time I've gotten more aware of my neurological differences and the significant impact they have on me and have had on my life story. And I become more aware of all of the people around me who also, through some type of disability or another, live much more difficult, much more complicated, often much more isolated lives than other folks around them, full of a ton of internal knowledge, a ton of uh, internalized fear because of all of the roadblocks and all of the doors that are closed in our society and our cultures to people who come to the table with a very different set of skills and aren't able to perform or talk or move in the same ways that we expect people to do. Our, our built environment, all of the infrastructure around us, really, no matter where in the world we live, is ultimately built for the mobile. It's built for people who are able to arrive with, you know, four limbs that work well and a brain that is wired to adapt to the kind of space that they're in. And for those who come a little bit different, either because their minds process information differently, their bodies move differently, or perhaps their bodies don't move in certain ways, it's those folks that I've come to realize are really most kept arm's length from the traditional roles in our society, from the traditional things that we measure as success, are all really kept away from a huge part of the disabled community in our world. And at least from my perspective, what I've noticed is that out of all the marginalized communities out there, and there's a lot of marginalized communities, it's likely that the disabled community is both the largest and the one that really ultimately has the least progress made towards our um, integration into society. And so a lot of the work I've come to do over the years is both internal work, helping myself better understand me and how I can interact in a way with the world that feels okay to me and also is acceptable to those around me. And so as I've become more sensitive to my internal struggle, I've become a lot more sensitive to the struggles of so many other people around us. And that's ultimately um, what made me lean into disability advocacy work. In the town I live in of Evanston, Illinois, just outside of Chicago, I serve as a commissioner for aging and disabilities, which means that I get to help oversee the work that our city does in keeping its obligations under the Americans with Disabilities Act, which exists in order to attempt to create some standard rules so that access is far more likely for those with limited means. And that role that I've been playing here in my hometown has just been incredibly energizing for me. Is I've been able to witness firsthand that the more you bring more voices to the table, the more you unearth the stories of people, and the more you bring those stories to the decision makers, the faster progress gets made. And sometimes it's slow progress and sometimes it's small progress, but ultimately it's progress. And to those all around us who, for whatever reason, haven't been able to fully take part in the economy or in part in housing in this country or the world, really, for so many of them, progress of any type is huge. And so that's how I got into disability justice work ultimately, and just out of my own coming to understand myself, and then through that coming to notice and see other people. And so that's a good sense of who I am.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Murphy. And I also know that you are a storyteller. Have you written any books, sir?
I have not, I have not published any books. I do a lot of storytelling with groups like the Moth, if you're familiar with them, and other storytelling venues that I've been lucky enough um, to get in front of. And then I'm have a fair amount of speaking opportunities where I am in front of groups either doing training on neurodiversity or training on autism or training on disability or workplace accommodations. In all those environments, I have found that storytelling is the most effective way to motivate people, to help break through to people's hearts and minds by giving them an authentic experience of mine or somebody else's that is told genuinely, that is told as a proper story with a beginning, with a middle, with an end, and is told in such a way that helps people get open to the idea of other people's experiences, because that's how we connect as humans. And I find that storytelling, rather than speech making, rather than just sort of training that's drilled into people, I find that storytelling ultimately is the best way to get through to people, whether it's employees of an organization or decision makers of an organization, or just or politicians who have hard decisions to make and need to be given as much context as possible before they make those decisions. I have a solo performance piece that I've have written and been working on a long time that I think will be one of the next things that I do in order to push forward my interest in exposing more about myself and more about the people that I've come to know. And so that'll be the, I think, next thing published that will come out from me. But storytelling is definitely at the heart of who I am, and is definitely what has made me be able to connect with people. And in the cases where I've been able to make change or force change or lead change, it's ultimately been storytelling that has broken barriers and pushed through for me more than anything else.
All right, Mr. Murphy, we'll be expecting it, sir. And I would like to dive more on the point of autistic person, sir. I would like to ask, sir, how has been your experience as a parent while being autistic, sir?
Yeah. Well, this is perhaps the most personal question for me. I'm so happy to answer it, but it really gets to the heart of what my experience has been um, as an autistic person. So I think the first thing to know or to recognize is that the primary activity of most autistic people is pretending not to be autistic. That is the full-time occupation, the full-time obsession of most autistic people is over time creating discipline, patterns, routines, and rules that allows people to self-manage themselves in such a way that they will appear as non-autistic as possible to the people around them. So many traits that autistic people have, very natural traits, whether it is different kinds of stimming or whether it is different types of verbal tics or whether it is very blunt, direct communication, or whether it's an inability to control one's tone or volume. All of these types of things can be grating on non autistic folks and can really create separation that is difficult or impossible to overcome. And so, autistic people spend their effort, a significant part of their bandwidth, a big part of their thinking at all times on things like making eye contact, counting eye contact, and then counting the amount of time you're not making contact, and then planning to go back and make eye contact again, of regulating your voice, of making sure that you're not just speaking naturally, but you're really trying to control the volume and tone of every word that comes out of your mouth. Now, you may or may not be good at this, and you may or may not be fooling anybody, but ultimately, it's what the vast majority of autistic people are doing. They're holding their bodies and all of their muscles as tense as they can in order to decrease the likelihood of them starting to shake or starting to bounce or starting to just, have their body move in Tourettic ways that may be out of their control. And so the primary occupation for most of my being has been trying to convince everybody else around me that I'm not autistic. And this is hard. It's hard. It's not fun. And ultimately, for a lot of people, it creates a loss of sense, loss of sense of self. If you're constantly pretending to be something you're not, after a while, is that who you become? Were you what you were before you started pretending to be something else? And it's just very complicated for people. This is called masking, and it's one of the primary reasons why the suicide rate amongst autistic individuals is so much higher than other groups. If you look at homeless populations around the country, or around the world, excuse me, you'll find that a significant percentage in the US, 16%, are autistic of the homeless population. And this is ultimately because of how much effort is spent pretending to be something that you're not, and the loss of self and loss of identity that comes in hand with that. And so that's the context I wanted to bring to parenting, because the truth is, from the moment my kids were born, I was pretending not to be autistic to them. And not because I didn't want my parents to know my kids to know exactly who I was or to understand me, but more because I saw it as my job as a parent to be strong for my kids, to make sure my kids are convinced at all times that, if things go bad, if things go wrong, dad is here, dad is strong, dad can handle it, dad has your back, and no matter what comes our way, you don't have to worry about dad's capacity to handle it. That's the feeling that I want my kids to have at all times. And more or less, that's the truth. But were I to have been my authentic self in front of my kids from early on, I think it would have been really difficult for them. And I think it would have been difficult for me and difficult for my spouse. Um, and that's because there needs to be a relationship with kids that is both internal and authentic and real, but also is one of leading and is one of showing our kids how we need to handle things, especially when the chips are down. And so parenting has been hard. It's been hard for me in order to figure out that right balance for my kids of how well to really understand me, to understand how hard things actually are for me, but also for my kids to grow up with confidence and for them to grow up knowing that they don't have to worry because their dad is available to them, is strong, and will always be there no matter what. And that balance has been really hard. And I've gotten better at it over time. I still haven't figured it out perfectly. But as my kids have gotten older, I've had the luxury of being more and more authentic with them, letting them more and more on the inside with me about what's really going on for me, about why I spend so much time in the dark alone, or about why I um, am often quiet for such long periods of time, or why um, there's times when I just can't sit down, when I just am always moving and can't be the quiet presence that they wish I was. And also for them to understand why sometimes I just shut down, where sometimes there's a level of burnout that happens because of how much uh, pull and work has come onto my system and how little rest I've been able to get and how much sensory overwhelm has come to me that there's times that I really shut down. People call it burnout. And I don't just get tired, I become incapable. I really lose myself and need to rest. And sometimes not for an hour or a day, but sometimes for much longer until I'm able to regain myself and able to then get back up and be brave again and step outside and deal with how incredibly bright it is and how that brightness um, causes me physical pain, and to be able to deal with how loud certain environments are and how painful, literally painful, that environment is and how well experiencing it, it's important for me to not look like I'm in pain. And doing that all is brave and hard and complicated. And um, especially with kids. Kids just create a whole complexity to it that's layered and nuanced and hard to unpack and different for every parent who's autistic and different for every kid of every autistic parent who may or may not be autistic themselves, of course, because it is a super hereditary thing. And so I think that the parents of kids, whether their kids are autistic or not, but autistic parents um, have a real balance to find. Um, and it's different in every relationship and different for every kid and different for every parent. But as my kids have gotten older and as I've gotten older,
Mm,
our relationships have become fuller. They've gotten to understand me
mm,
much better and have already been pre-convinced that I'm able to handle anything, that dad is strong, that dad is there when the chips are down.
mm,
And so now as more and more about me is being unpacked to them, things become clearer to them, things become more full to them,
mm,
and in a way that I don't think is disappointing. because they've seen me at my strongest. They've seen what I can do. And
mm,
so now, as they get introduced to more and more of the things I can't do, or perhaps that I shouldn't do, they're sensitive to it and they're open to it and they're respectful
mm,
of it. And that's where we are today. And hopefully things will continue to impact themselves in a positive way. But of all of the things I've had to do, whether it's figuring out how to manage in big jobs or figuring out how to fake my way through school, um, and all of those various things, it is no doubt parenting that has called on me to do the most internal thinking and the most sacrificing, the most figuring out the best ways to be who I can be in order to best serve my kids and my partner. And I've never been perfect at it, but I've gotten better and I will continue to get better. And and I'm proud, super proud of my kids, and proud of the relationship that we built together. Um, and so much respect and love to really anyone with a disability, invisible or not, who is raising kids, whether those kids are disabled or not. Um, it's hard work and it requires um, quiet discipline and uh, and no matter how parents are doing it, whatever way they're finding to do it, is just worthy of a lot of respect, and a lot of um, you know, almost quiet wonder, um, in appreciating what they're doing and the likely sacrifice it takes for them to do it. And same for those kiddos who are likely growing up, of knowing that their parents are struggling to do what they're doing, and also um, knowing um, that many of those limitations they're seeing their parents have are often limitations that they may have themselves. And it's just a big growing process for everybody. And for those parents who are able to keep their kids on the inside while having that process and are able to um, keep keep that light alive between them and their kids, is just amazing. And and I love having it with my own kids, and I love seeing it in others. And so, no doubt, parenting well autistic has been the most difficult um, part of my experience so far, full of all sorts of tricky situations I've been in and things I've had to navigate quietly, um, and often not well. Um, but parenting is the one that's taken the most effort, and I think the one I'm the most proud of. And certainly something that I've spent a lot of time talking to other autistic folks about their experience parenting, about the difficult question of whether or not they should be parents. It's hard, it's brave, and certainly for me, the most important part of my journey, and the one I think that it's really good to talk about, so that other parents, both autistic parents and non-autistic parents, disabled parents, non-disabled parents, can start to understand what's really going on the inside of those relationships.
Hmm, I completely agree, Mr. Murphy. It is definitely not easy. You know, as a parent, there are a lot of responsibilities that goes with it. And as also an autistic, it even makes it more harder. You know, I remember you said, you know, pretending to be what you are not is very, very tough and difficult. And you also talk about the suicide rates when it comes to an autistic person. It's really not easy. We just continue to hope for the best and we continue to hope for more betterness and more greatness. in this world will find ourselves. Thank
Yes.
you so
Yes,
much,
yes.
Mr. Murphy. And lastly, there's a question I normally ask Mr. Murphy from the ancestors, from the forefathers. There are a lot of things that do exist during our ancestral time that is not existing in our time today again. If there is anyone or anything you would like to bring back to our time today, what do you think that thing would be, sir?
So, I mean, it's just simple earth care and mysticism. So for me, when one is in true connection
Mm,
with the world around them, and when one is really paying attention moment to moment without the distractions of our modern world,
mm,
when one is really trying to just be in relation with a flower, be
mm,
in relation with a plant, a tree, a sunset, when we are most simple and in relationship with nature, we are a very different kind of being, and a different
mm,
type of connection and possibility is opened up. And this was natural for many of our ancestors.
mm,
It was natural and obvious that plants were healers, that the sun was a cure,
mm,
that light was the most powerful thing, the most powerful force. And many of these things to our ancestors were simple, were obvious, and just demanded respect. And this has been lost. Not everywhere, but most everywhere, particularly in parts of the world where I've been exposed to. And if I could bring something back, I would just want to bring back a mystical connection
mm,
between people and nature, where we feel connected, where we understand deep within ourselves that we can communicate with nature, that we can communicate with animals, that
mm,
we are connected in a far more profound and deep way that our current brains and current worlds allow us to imagine. Our ancestors understood the potential of this, and many of our ancestors felt this in their day to day moments. And if I could bring back something for myself, if I could bring back something for my loved ones, something that I think would really move us all forward together, it would be for us all to regain that sense of magic and mysticism between our bare feet and the dirt below them.
Well said, Mr. Murphy. A lot of things are missing today, and it does exist during our ancestral time. Thank you, Mr. Murphy. You definitely answered every single question I brought on board through your explanation and every single details you brought from your personal experience down to the place as you being a parent and the challenges and how you also try your best to overcome these challenges. Thank you so much, Mr. Murphy. I want to sincerely thank you for the time and the opportunity you've given me and also the audience to listen and learn from you. Thank you so much, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
All right, sir. Bye bye.
Take care.